The three trees. Once upon a mountain top, three little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first tree, looking up at the stars, twinkling like diamonds above. I want to hold treasure. I want to be covered with gold and be filled with the greatest treasures in the world. And the second little tree looked out on the small stream trickling by its way to the ocean. I want to travel mighty waters and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world. The third tree looked down into the valley below where busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. I don't want to leave this mountaintop. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven because I will be the tallest in the world. The years passed, the rains came, the sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. One day, woodcutters climbed the mountain. The woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful. It is perfect for us." With a whoop of the shining axe, the first tree fell. "Now I shall be made into a beautiful chest, and I shall hold wonderful treasure," thought the first tree. Woodcutters looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong." With a swoop of a shining axe, the second tree fell. The second tree thought, "Now I shall sail mighty waters. I shall be a strong ship, fit for a king." And the first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought him to a carpenter shop, but the busy carpenter was not thinking about treasure chests. Instead, his work-worn hands cut the woods into boards and hammered the first tree into a manger to feed animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with treasure. He was merely a manger coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. This was not his dream. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard, but no mighty sailing ships were being made that day. Instead, that once strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat, too small and too weak to sail an ocean or even a river. He was taken to a little lake. Every day he brought loads of dead, smelly fish. No king would ever sail him. That was not his dream. The years passed, the rains came, the sun shone, and the third tree grew tall. One day, woodcutters climbed the mountain. With a swoop of a shining axe, the third tree fell. The third tree was confused. The woodcutter cut her strong beams and left her in a lumber yard. The once tall tree wondered sadly, "What happened? All I ever wanted to do was stay on the mountaintop and point men to heaven. This is not my dream." Many, many days and nights passed the trees. Great dreams seemed so far away, they stopped thinking about them. For what greatness could come to a manger, a stinky fishy boat, or a scrap of wood? One night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby into the manger. The first tree had not become a bejeweled treasure chest, but now as a manger it had held the greatest treasure of all time. God's only Son, Jesus. God's plan was much better than the first tree's dream. Many, many days and nights passed, and the second tree dream seemed so far away, for no king would ever sail the water in a stinky fishing boat. But God had his own plan for each of his trees. One evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into that old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out into the lake. Soon, a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and the rain. And the tired man awakened, and he stood up and he stretched out his hand and he said, "Peace, be still." And the storm stopped as quickly as it had begun. And the second tree felt the traveler's power. He had never carried a king of this world. But suddenly, the second tree knew he was carrying the king of heaven and earth. This was far better than his dream of long ago. Days and nights passed, and one Friday, the third tree was startled when yanked from a forgotten lumber pile, then cut into two pieces and made into a cross. The third tree flinched as it was carried through the angry, jeering crowd on the back of a man. The third tree shuddered when soldiers nailed the man's hand to his crossbeams. On a hillside, under a blackening sky, the third tree swayed as the soldiers raised the cross. The third tree felt ugly and had become a sign of death. The third tree's dream was lost. 3 days later, when the sun rose and the earth trembled, the third tree with joy knew that God's love had changed everything. Miraculously, God's plan had taken them beyond their youthful dreams. The first tree was a manger that held the greatest treasure of all, God's beloved Son. The second tree was a stinky, smelly little fishing boat that had carried the kings of kings, God's Son, during his work on earth. And to this day, the third tree, made into a cross, points people to God as a symbol of his great love for us.